Hey, I'm Saga and I'm a software engineer in London that went to university to study aerospace engineering. And during my time at university, I started 2 startups and now I am a billionaire. Yeah, that whole billionaire thing, that didn't actually happen. So here's my story of how I basically failed when trying to build a successful startup. Twice. So let's start off with my first startup, which was called Vertisol. Vertisol, in essence, was basically a marketplace for people who wanted to launch small satellites, could find rocket companies that had those capabilities. There are actually quite a number of small launch vehicle companies out there on the planet, and I thought it'd be a good idea to basically try and make a platform which helps people who want to launch small satellites, such as CubeSats, find an appropriate rocket to launch their payload on. So you might be thinking, that's quite a cool idea, but here's why it didn't actually work out. So the first reason it didn't really work out for me is that I didn't actually have any experience of actually going down the process myself of trying to book a launch on a rocket for a small satellite. Secondly, due to a lack of actual full understanding of the industry, I assumed that there are a lot of rocket companies, so there would be a lot of people who are able to launch satellites. But actually, majority of these small sat launch companies are actually still in development, so they aren't able to commercially launch satellites just yet. So in essence, what I was trying to do was to build a marketplace where pretty much both sides of the market were still not ready. So whilst I was working on my startup, I spoke to a number of different rocket company CEOs, and well, some of them came back to me and said that they didn't really want their services to be commoditized. And with a marketplace like the one I was developing, that would have been a problem for them. So here are some of the lessons I learned during my time working on Vertisol that I think you might find interesting to know. In my case, I was sort of approaching this as a way of being like, I think there is a problem, so here's a cool solution that I think will work. Instead of being like, is there actually a problem? And then coming up with a solution that actually solved it. So that I think is really important to understand thoroughly before you even attempt to found a startup. So I didn't actually work on this startup myself. I did have a co-founder, and this is another mistake I made. I ended up picking the first person who knew how to code that was willing to work with me, and they weren't necessarily interested in the thing that we were building. And if you haven't really properly thought out about who your co-founder should be, this can be somewhat of a problem. And my co-founder was not really interested that much or didn't have a deep passion for the industry or especially what we were building. So I think that, it's not ideal when, only one of you is like super passionate and the other one's sort of just there for the fun of it, I guess. So I think if you are to basically start a company with someone else, make sure you're both like super passionate about the industry and sort of the reason of why you're wanting to solve this problem. The reason why you need a co-founder to be passionate about the industry and the problem you're solving is because there's going to be moments in time where you think that your company doesn't really have a positive direction. And so you need someone who's able to really stay strong and hold and believe in what you're building to overcome those challenges and those dark periods of running a startup. And this also applies to you as well. If you're just running a startup for the sake of getting rich, then I would say you're probably not going to be so successful, because most startup founders that I know of that have gone on to build things are genuinely passionate about who their users are or who their clients are or whoever they're selling their products to. So they're the main lessons I learned when working on Vertisol. But now let's move on to startup number 2. Introducing to you Yeet Deal. Yeah, I literally decided to put Yeet in the name. So I started working on Yeet Deal after I saw what a company in Australia was doing. But that company in Australia hadn't brought their services to the UK, so that's where I thought I could capitalize on. Okay, so why didn't this one work out for me? Well, clearly it took 2 attempts at a startup to really understand the lesson of actually work on something that you understand the industry of and that you actually care about. And in this case, I have never worked in a restaurant, nor knew anyone that had, or really understood the restaurant industry as a whole. And then the other thing is I don't give a shit about restaurants, to be honest. I just wanted to make an app because then I can make a ton of money. So yeah, it didn't work for obvious reasons. But I did do some interesting things when working on this product, and that was to pretty much cold call restaurants and trying to talk to restaurants to explain to you how you can help them. And actually, out of all the restaurants me and a co-founder of mine called, one person was genuinely interested, but then I guess, since the business model of the app is that the more restaurants you have, the more people will join, and therefore the more restaurants will join, just having one person interested was not really worthwhile pursuing. And also because neither of us really probably interested in building this as a product, we were just like, meh, we'll just sack it off. So yeah, in essence, I guess the biggest reason why it was failed is not the business idea. The business idea might have actually worked, but there was just no interest from myself and my co-founder to really get it going. So yeah, having a deep-rooted interest in the problem you're solving is probably one of the most important things that you should have as a startup founder. I hope you learned some stuff from this video about what it really takes to start a company and what also not to do, as well as what intentions you shouldn't have when going into starting a startup. And yeah, I guess I kind of learned the hard way by sort of going through the process of trying to start a company twice. And well, I think this is something that you guys can learn from if it's a career path you want to take, if you want to be a startup founder. And if not, I hope you just found this video entertaining. So subscribe to my channel, like the video, and comment down below if you have a startup or if you're actually working on building a startup. And I will see you in another video. Goodbye.